Good afternoon, YouTube. Ripped off and pissed off, coming back at ya, and guess what? I am William from Westworld because I found the centre of the maze. So, what we have here is what I've deducted from all of the stuff that I've read, and there's still a lot more for me to read, and I'm still waiting to hear back from a few people. But I'm focusing on the issues that are directly affecting me and my complex, and I'm pretty sure that there's many, as I've said before, that also find these issues. So that's why I'm sharing them with the world via YouTube, so that some people can get on board with me and try and help me raise awareness and affect some change and get some amendments made to this legislation that actually benefit the people who are living in these complexes. So the issues that I've identified for us as our complex, not just me, everyone here, is the on-site management contract being 25 years. That's ridiculous. There's no one to police or ensure that those contractual obligations are met. The people that are supposed to do it are the committee, but I know I've had some interesting conversations and some arguments with on-site managers, this one, the previous one, and as a lot owner, you don't want to argue with the person in the lot next door because they're only a wall away. So these sorts of issues don't get brought up enough. People just kind of turn a blind eye and they don't worry about it. But what they're not realising is that they are affecting themselves because the price of our properties are plummeting, and I'm going to do that in another video as well. The committee members, many of them sometimes don't live on site. They're investors. They might be interstate. They might be living in another part of Brisbane. So they're not really voting on what's best for the complex. They're voting on what's best for their hip pocket because they are an investor, and that's fair enough. No issue there. However, I'd suggest to investors that changing the situation in your complex, if you've got more owner-occupiers than you have investors, and removing an on-site letting agent is probably going to save you some money because a gardener is cheaper, a property manager real estate is cheaper, and a property manager from a real estate agent will police what's happening in the garden and the grounds, and if there's something amiss, they will ring you and tell you. That's their job. Whereas an on-site manager is not going to tell you that you've got a dead tree in your backyard, because then he's got to do something about it. So there's benefits in this for investors as well. Also, I think that the committee members are ill-advised by the body corporate management company. They advise just basic, this is the rule, this is it. They don't want to do hard work. They just want to shuffle paper. And I think that I've done, as I've said to you before, hours and hours on this stuff. And I've read acts, I've read regulations, I've read amendments to acts, all legal jargon, all legal speak. I'm lucky enough to have a legal sister, so I have referred to her a few times for advice about stuff like the act itself. It's had so many amendments, I didn't know where to go to look for it, whereas someone with legal experience did, and I got an amended one from 2017. So like in my video yesterday, why are lot owners not being advised that amendments are being made to the acts that affect our properties? Because we should get to have a say, not just the real estate agents and the body corporate management companies and the real estate developers, and the government who gets money from the real estate developers, because they have no interest in the lot owner at the end of the day. So that I take a bit of issue with that, because acts are being amended based on profitability and not how they affect the community. And under the Geneva Convention of Civil Rights, we are to protect the community first before we protect the financial interest of big corporations and banks. We've already got a royal commission happening into our banking system in this country already. You know, them refusing to lend on contracts less than a certain amount of years is purely about the interest that they're going to earn from that contract. So, and they know it's not going to go for 25 years. So then obviously there's some sort of payout fee or something on the lending that on-site manager got. So there's no one here to protect us, the people. And that's what the politicians are supposed to do. They're supposed to regulate to protect us and not the big corporations who are making all of the money. So I did some calculations based on accommodation model versus regular model or module. I think module is weird. They should call it a model. So my complex has 16 units. Now, at my end of the complex, there are 8 units. I know 2 are renters, 1's for sale, and the rest of us are owner-occupiers. And at the other end of the complex, there's another 8 units. Now, as a generous guess, I'm going to say 4 investors down there. The on-site manager's unit is there, so that's the management right units. So on that percentage, we've got, or that ratio, we've got 12 out of the 16 units that are owner-occupier. So our model should definitely be a standard model and not an accommodation model. And what that means for us as a complex is we don't need a letting manager. We don't need someone to be on site to hand out keys, etc., because there's not enough investor units here to do that. And real estate agents handle all of that stuff just fine. You don't need someone on the site to do that, particularly when there's only 16 units, no swimming pool, no barbecue, no common facilities at all. And we should be allowed, so this is one of the first changes I'd like to see to the legislation, is that when changing the module to reflect what is relevant in the complex, then the caretaker's contract should not stand, because then the caretaker's contract is in complete contrary to the model under the Act or the module under the Act. So again, there's an actual legislative, I don't know the right word, there's an actual legislation in place to protect these 25-year contracts. I think that needs to go. I think it needs to go straight away. And when I was working in real estate, which was when they deregulated around 2004, I think it was, about 12 months after that, there was a big outroar because of overseas investment, and particularly Chinese money, because here in Brisbane and particular suburbs within Brisbane, there was a lot of Chinese investment coming in, and they made a lot of restrictions on all overseas investors to try and keep the property pricing down. Is this buying and flipping of management right contracts in 3 years the new overseas investment trend? Are they buying these management rights and putting kids in there or relatives in there or any old person in there? Is this what's happening? Is this why every real estate and everyone's protecting these 25-year contracts, because everyone's going to lose out if they're gone? Well, all the big corporations are going to lose out if they're gone. To employ a contractor to do the gardening would be far cheaper and far better manicured than what you're getting from just some guy who bought the management rights because he wants to make money and quite frankly doesn't know how to use the gardening equipment properly. But as I say, you can't do that immediately. You're not allowed to change it. So I wondered why the body corporate management didn't advise of this. Now, they didn't advise me when I rang up to say that I was unhappy and that I didn't even think our complex needed an on-site manager anyway. They didn't explain to me the difference in the accommodation modules, and that by changing the module we have the potential of removing the contract. Now, no, we can't do this immediately, but by my way of thinking, through resolutions at the meeting, if we change the module to standard module and then refused all requests for extension of that management contract, he would not be able to sell it because nobody would get lending on it, and then the contract would expire. And as a community, we would be able to negotiate something new. We'd be able to say we don't need management rights, we don't want them. Everyone can get their own external property manager, and we'll hire a gardener. And the body corporate management company can pay the gardener, which will be far cheaper than $200 a month per lot. Because you would think once the gardener comes in, we're a very small lot, as I said, 16 lots, no pool, no barbecue, no hardly any garden at all, really. So if he came in twice on the first month for 3 or 4 hours at $65 and then once a month for $65, all of us lot owners would save a hell of a lot of money every year. And then that got me thinking about the body corporate lawyers that were hired by the committee some time ago, and we did talk about this. And I managed, luckily, to track down the gentleman who was the president of the committee at the time. Now, I said that was just a few years ago, but we worked out that that was probably about 7 years ago that happened. So I asked him if the body corporate lawyers had explained these accommodation modules. Did he understand about that? Was that ever told to him at the time? And he didn't understand, didn't know. So why were the body corporate lawyers not advising this? Because if you're a body corporate lawyer hired by a committee to try and get rid of a management contract, I just worked out how to do it. It takes a while, but I've worked out how to do it. So it got me thinking about all of this stuff, right? So let's say it was 7 years ago and that we're being generous on, or conservative, or whatever, on this estimation of time, this ex-president and I. So if 7 years ago, and he did remind me that after all the kerfuffle, the on-site manager applied to extend the contract because he wanted to get out. And at that point, they wanted him out, so they let him extend the contract he sold, and now we've got this gentleman. So let's say if 7 years ago there was still 12 years to run on the contract, so there wasn't lending, it was taken back to 25 years so he could sell it. However, if the body corporate management company or the body corporate lawyers observed their duty of care to their clients, they really should have been advising it in the best interest of the owners, not of the on-site manager, not of the resale of the contract, not of the bank as to whether they can get enough money, and not the real estate agent about how much commission he's going to make off a big fat body corporate contract. So this is what should have happened, and I've worked it out. It's taken me a while, but I've worked it out. So really, it's not that hard, and it should have been told to the committee 7 years ago. So the committee should have been advised to pass a motion to vote to change the module from accommodation to standard module. And then from there, the next step would be to refuse all requests for contract extensions. So you just keep denying them the extension until eventually the contract runs out. And then you have an AGM or a special meeting, call a special general meeting, and you decide as a community, which you have the right to do because we have all the deciding power, to no longer have an on-site manager because we don't need a letting agent. We don't need the gardener to be here full time, particularly when they're doing a terrible job. Investors can get real estate letting. It's very competitive today, and I'd reckon you'd get way better service. And then the committee can hire an external gardener that is experienced and knows what he's doing. So if that had happened, our complex today, as at this year, would only have 5 years left to run on our management contract. So we wouldn't have much longer to go until we could all get out of this money-sucking pit. So I worked it out. And at the end of the 5 years, the on-site manager's salary at a raise of 5% per annum is actually a reasonably decent wage for a person who goes and sits at a desk all day. 45,947 will be his wage for doing practically nothing. So I think probably he's the letting agent for 3 of the investment properties maybe in the complex. That's been one of the biggest complaints of the managers so far, is that nobody's using them as a letting agent, and I'd suggest that's because the job that's being done in the gardens, etc., seems reasonably crappy. So why would you let them rent out your townhouse? Also, I'd like to see legislation change, and I'd like to see major changes that benefit lot owners. So the first one is that if a scheme is under an incorrect module, it should automatically be changed, and there should be some provision for the removal of the management contract and maybe remuneration, compensation, something like that for the on-site manager, because he has signed on to a particular contract. But really, that's not my concern. That's the developer and the on-site manager and the real estate's concern, really. We need to have 25-year contracts outlawed, because there's not another state in Australia that does it. Queensland is the only one. So that needs to go. And if you're talking about, I understand Queensland has, the Gold Coast and the Sunshine Coast, but what about Sydney and Melbourne? They have a lot of high density living. Everywhere's high density living is going up now because of the affordability crisis and all the people coming to live in Queensland because the weather's nice. So, we need to get some control over this industry, because it's taking off and there's nobody watching them. Sorry guys, where was I up to? Yeah, so duty of care. Let's talk about duty of care. Duty of care is a basic legal termination that means that, as a basic principle of law, even what they call implied duty of care can be used. So, example, body corporate management companies. I visited all websites of about 12 or 13 of them, and on their websites, when they talk about, and including the company that we use, but I'm not naming names, all of them call them, their company and their staff, professionals in body corporate management, in body corporate rules and regulation and legislation. So all state, aside from the secretarial stuff that they do, like issuing levies, meeting notices, all that kind of stuff, they also say that they advise and assist the committee on matters of regulation. So on their websites, the way they're advertising their services, they're positioning themselves as an industry expert. So therefore, there's an implied duty of care there. If they're an industry expert and a body corporate committee is relying on them because they are not the industry expert and they have a life and they're volunteered to go on the committee and they work and they have kids or a dog or a partner or a sick mother or whatever, they trust that because these people are the industry experts, and the body corporate is paying them that they will advise what is best for the complex and for the owners. So I'm saying that our body corporate company, the previous one when we got the lawyers, and even this one, has failed dismally in advising the committee about legal and legislative stuff, because they've just extended the management contract again. So I suspect he might be looking to sell. So I've got to do some research on some property stuff, and that'll be my next video. But so the lot owners are relying on these people. They see them as the expert. They believe them. So I think that they have failed in their duty of care to their clients, particularly in this complex, and particularly the previous body corporate management company, who, as much as it would have taken a long time, we could have changed the arrangements of this complex, and they did not explain that. All they kept saying is, no, it's a 25-year contract, no, it's a 25-year contract. They didn't talk about, as much as it would be a long way around. So that's a failure in duty of care to your client, because you have not given them all of the information that they need or have asked or paid for. So the other thing that I would like to see as put into legislation is to get the Commissioner for Body Corporate Services to become more than just an adjudicator, to become a regulator, or even to have a regulatory body like the ACCC sitting above the Commissioner, so that there's somebody paying attention to what they're doing and paying attention to the way they're advising their clients, which are the body corporate companies and ultimately lot owners, because we own the company and we're on the committees and that sort of thing, and we're not the experts, and it's confusing and convoluted and it goes around in a circle. So there needs to be regulators in place to make sure that these companies are advising lot owners properly and appropriately for the scheme in which they live and the people that live there. Sorry. So they've all, that's also a duty of care for the management company to advise the committee that decisions that they make as a committee must benefit all of the lot owners in the complex, whether the lot owners vote or not. There needs to be a bigger view rather than a personal view. So my example here is the irrigation. There's a massive fail on behalf of the body corporate company and the committee. And when I spoke to the ex-president, he reminded me that didn't happen 3 years ago. That happened when he was here, not long after the contract was extended. So people are feeling the pressure of these ridiculous body corporate fees because they don't want to pay for water to water the garden. So that's got to be an indicator to somebody that there's a real problem here. The farm stock decision, I'm still working on that. That's a case that I'm hoping I might be able to stir some shit up with, because I'm just trying to get attention and make sure that people are aware of this rort that is happening every day in this state. An on-site manager also has a duty of care, and it states this in the Act and also in the body on-site manager's contract, and that is he has a duty of care to ensure that all parties to the contract receive benefit from the terms. Now, at the moment, the lot owners in this complex are not receiving their benefit from the terms of this contract because our property values are plummeting, because our grounds look terrible. So it's failing all around, this system. And real estate agents sell it this way. They don't explain the duties and the responsibilities. They play it down. They play down the gardening, they play down the letting. If they do talk about the letting, they talk about the percentage of the rent that the on-site manager will get. They are sold as cash cows, and I don't think that these on-site managers really understand what they're buying. They're buying something that they think is this really great cash cow investment, but there's a lot of work that's involved, and it's not being explained to them properly. So in some ways you can't really blame them, really. So that's it. That's the center of the maze. That's the nutshell, is that every amendment that's been made to that document right up until last year, 2017, has no provision to protect lot owners from substandard service, from devaluation of property due to somebody else's not doing what their job was. So I have made an appointment, well, I have requested an appointment with Ross Vasta. I did write to him, but since I've done this research, I'm a lot more clear on what it is that I want to discuss with him. So I have made an appointment with him. I will let you know if I manage to get onto that one. We'll do another field trip soon, and we'll start at the beginning of the complex, and we'll go all of the way through so you can get a good idea of, again, what he's doing to get $36,000 this year. Please like, and please share, and comments. If you've got comments and you would like to contribute, I would love to hear from you, particularly if you're a lot owner. The only thing I say is no hate speech. I'm simply a single mum who is outraged that I have to keep paying for staff that I'm not getting. And I'm sick and tired of complaining about it, so I've decided to do something about it. And this year, my new motto is, what would have happened if Rosa Parks never got on that bus? Think about that. So this is my Rosa Parks moment, I'm hoping. Anyway, you guys, I'll be back with some property information in regards to pricing and values in the area, and how I believe possibly the current state of the complex and the ridiculously high body corporate fees are affecting the value of all of our properties. So again, thank you for listening, and the website's on the screen, the petition's on the screen. We're starting to get some traction. We've got some more signatures on there now. I've only got 7, but it's only been a week. We're getting lots more views on the channel, and I've also got a Facebook page, which is Body Corporate Lot Owners Demanding Change. I post all of these videos there, and I post some other articles there. There's a group attached to that page. So if you're a lot owner and you'd like to ask questions, or you'd like to start a discussion, if there's something that you would like to bring up with me that I may have the information right here and I can answer your question, I'd love to hear you and interact with you guys. Again, I'm sorry for the poor quality of my videos, but I'm not here to dazzle you. I'm here to give you information and try and gain some support for what is quite simply a social and political injustice. Okay, you guys, thank you.